If you have questions, go ahead and ask them. The thing is that this is about failure, and I'm going to be sharing my personal story with failure. It's still relatively new to me. I feel kind of vulnerable sharing it, but I think that's okay because ultimately if it can help people learn, that's fine. So, failure is something that we all experience. Failure is something that will happen probably as a VISTA in one capacity or in another. You fail to turn something in, you'll fail to go to do whatever it is, maybe your health will fail, who knows? So, it's something that's worth talking about, coming around. So, okay, let me tell you what this training is not about. This training is not about praising success, it is not about praising failure, and it's not about making you feel good or feel inspirational. I don't do inspiration. I hate inspirational posters. There's no secret formula. There's no magic bullets. Okay? What it is about understanding what failure is. It's learning about how failure can and does affect you, the importance of accepting failure, and some ways to use failure to your advantage and to use failure in your organization. There's a few tips at the end. So, what is failure? How do we think of failure? Please raise your hands. I gave a whole bunch of questions for you to think about. Raise some hands. Jason.
It's horrible.
What is give me some more. That wasn't enough. I need to know.
Strike out.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, it depends on your culture, it depends on your background. Failure to one person isn't necessarily failure to
I
someone.
love that answer. Yes, Laura.
So like personally, I struggle with negative self-talk. So like failure is super difficult for me because I internalize it.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, this says something about me as a person. And like eventually I do get through it, but it's really, really hard. It's like a serious blow to my self-esteem.
Right.
I'm just going to be honest. Like.
And we'll talk about that. So, where do those attitudes come from? Talk about maybe culture, biology. Is it a learned behavior in your family? Yes to everything?
Yeah.
Yes, and yes.
Yep.
Probably. I think science has basically said that yes to all of those for most behaviors. Now, this is the actual definition of failure. You can sum up the dictionary definition of failure by saying it's when something doesn't happen that should have happened. That is basically failure in every way. Right? My kidneys failed. That's because they're supposed to work. Right? Like, I'm supposed to be successful, but I wasn't here. That's kind of what failure is. Okay, so in that objective, non-emotional definition, it doesn't sound all that bad. Okay? And then there's the feeling. Okay? Now I want to go to the bottom first. Let's think about biology. Let's think about our ancestors and how failure to them had strong negative emotions attached to it to keep them from dying. Okay? Now my probability of dying unless I'm in a car intoxicated is probably really low nowadays. Right? So, but my emotions have not caught up to where we are culturally. Okay? So that's something to keep in mind. So, what are the feelings that we have when we fail? Megan.
Shame.
Shame. Powerful emotion.
Doubt.
Danny, got some doubt? What do you got, Danny?
I think also, like, with my failures, I always look at the opportunity of what to do different. And, like, as crappy as I feel, I always, like, really try to see what to do to succeed.
Right. So that's an adaptation to deal with it that I think is important. Guilt. Powerful emotion, too.
A lot of people get that disappointment, and then it continues to steamroll and continue on. Like, oh, I failed once.
Right.
I'll probably just fail again.
So I'm going to give a word to that. Hysteria. Right? When it becomes so bad you don't even know what to do. What do you got?
I'm saying lack of self-worth.
You got. You just feel like you're a waste of space, that the universe should just erase you. Yes, those are all legitimate, important. Wow, these did not print the way I wanted them to.
While you're doing that, I'll tell you the worst failure I ever experienced, and I feel like it was pretty intense. I actually felt like, and it was hard to explain because it felt a little crazy when I was feeling that way, but I literally felt like my survival was at stake. Like we were talking about with the, but I like people would say to me, it's not that bad, and I would be like, no, you don't understand. Like I feel like I'm being completely rejected. I'm out in the open, the wild, I don't have my tribe to help me, right? And it was a pretty terrifying feeling.
So,
Scared, doesn't
it is. These are all really important things. So the question is failure bad in and of itself? We can talk about really powerful emotions. The answer depends, of course, because I gave it to you. You're welcome. It depends, and that's really true, because we had Danny who's saying, well, I know I can learn something from my failure. That's true. Okay? But failure can also destroy you. Yes, Arthur.
It also depends on your perspective, because for you it's like, oh, only one person came to this meeting. Like that's a failure, but really what the definition of failure is that it completely stopped, which it didn't.
Yes. So that's true, our expectations. And that's really true too. That's something to think about. That a lot of times failure is situational. And we'll talk more about that in a second. This was from a Harvard Business Review article. They talked about failure in a business sense. And the continuum is really cool. Of course, you can't see it very good. But the continuum is more about blame. And we love when someone fails to assign blame. There are whole organizations that's all they do. Certain bosses, all they do is look to blame people for things instead of talk about the organization in a different way. I have worked for people like that. I don't anymore, thank goodness, but it's been a thing. And the truth is, sometimes it's your fault, sometimes it's not. And that's why the continuum or the spectrum is really kind of an interesting idea. And if you can look at I don't know if you can read it, but the top is like deviance or like defiance. That's the number, like the part of failure that is 100% your fault is when you're actively trying not to do what they're supposed to do, okay? And then you get to like the best way that failure can happen, which is when you're a path breaker, like you're doing something brand new that no one's ever done before, and you're just trying to figure out stuff. That's fine. Failure's good, because then you know what not to do. And so there's a whole bunch of different places here for you to fall. These places in the middle are hard. Like if the task is really challenging, if the process isn't very well defined, even lack of ability, process complexity, those are places in the middle that are difficult to work in because a lot of times the failure isn't just your fault. Okay? So go to the next slide. And this is what I have learned about high expectations. I've been in lots of organizations, MLMs, schools, all kinds of places, and I'll talk about high expectations. And when I was working in Teach for America, they were like, high expectations are the only way students will learn. And what they forgot to do is tell you these two things. High expectations are only useful if you frequently revisit them and make sure that they still apply. High expectations are also only good if adequate support is given. You can't expect someone to build a rocket to the moon and you're not giving them any metal to do it. It's not going to, you just can't do it. So that's important as you create new systems and new processes. If the expectation is really high, are you giving the support to help people reach those expectations? I think about that all the time as a VISTA leader. So we have different levels, okay? And I think some of these powerful emotions come depending on how big your failure is. Now, this is a list I created myself from my own experiences, and there's two qualifiers that make something move into a different category, and that's how much effort is required for me to fix it, and how much it impacts my life. So if you look at a small failure, it's like virtually no consequences. This is like missing commas in my papers. Okay? Causes really no real effort to fix. Takes no real time out of my life. Right? Mid-sized failure, could be annoying to fix. Anybody have an idea what may qualify as a mid-sized failure? It's not like it's bothersome but not huge.
Like quiz. Like I have a quiz for my class every week, and failing one of them is kind of a mid-sized failure, but it's not totally gone. I can still kind of fix it.
Yeah. It takes more effort,
but it does have a consequence. consequence.
But there is a consequence. Yeah, that's a great one. Ari, what do you got?
So, like a repeated mistake, I would call a mid-sized failure. Like, just for example, last night I was working and I was typing emails to teachers, and I kept messing up the emails, so they got like 5 emails from me in one day. So that's a little bothersome.
Bothersome, but not the worst thing in the world to deal with, okay? Okay, and then you got a large failure. Okay, this is something it's pretty big. Multiple people are probably involved, and it will alter what you do in your life, at least temporarily, and takes a lot of effort to fix, right? What do you guys got? Traffic accident. They could potentially have to go to physical therapy for months. That changes your life, right? Failing out of college. Losing a job. Jason, what do you got?
Forgetting to like replace your tires and then have tire blowout. Kind of traffic accident, but
Yeah, you're on the right thing. Okay, and so there's a serious amount of nuance here between catastrophic and large. Okay, large is fixable, and you will return to where you were before whatever it is that happened, for the most part. Catastrophic is the thing that we're all afraid of, and it is something that permanently changes your paradigm, a thought, your actions, everything you do. Okay, it could be like losing a leg, right? Like that's changed your life, especially if you like fell off a cliff or something like that. Like, and you can recover from it, but you will never be the same. Okay, so we're going to talk about, like I said, myself. I'm only qualified to talk about myself, so I'll give you an example. What we need to do before that, the compounding factors. Obviously, if you make a lot of really small mistakes, they'll roll into a huge one. And sometimes, just by nature of the way your life's going at that time, you may be more vulnerable to certain levels of failure or certain failures in general. Okay? It was hard for me to write that down, but I realized that, and once I talk about what happened to me, that the life situations was 100% the reason why my failure was as large as it was. So before VISTA, in the year 2014, I thought I was going to be a teacher. And I joined Teach for America, and I was going to move to Louisiana and teach kids in this little teeny town. Like, we're talking the Cove-sized town. And teach them some math, which I was not qualified to teach. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Okay, so I was at training. Teach for America has a 6-week training. It's like boot camp. I went there. I saw my kids every night. My wife was pregnant with my 3rd kid. I was pretty pumped because he was going to be born right before I went to go permanently live in Louisiana, back home. I got home, my wife went into labor. He was dead. I didn't know what to do. So we thought, oh, sure, let's just do what we're going to do, because that's the only plan we have. So we buried him, and I left, all within a week. I was there for my wife, and I went off by myself, 2,000 miles away, to go teach a bunch of kids, something I wasn't qualified to teach. I did not know I was not qualified to teach till later, but that comes later. So I started teaching. I was unfamiliar with the environment. Louisiana is very different than here. It's different than Texas. They're have very particular belief systems. And Teach for America had filled my head full of unrealistic high expectations. And they gave me no support, and neither did the school. They said, here's a curriculum, teach it. And we just heard from Barbara today that the curriculum is supposed to be the vehicle to get kids to the end goal. And it was a curriculum that they bought that no one knew anything about, and said, here you go, good luck. They gave me all the kids who had F's and problems in the bigger plans, which is not a smart thing to do for new teachers. So I didn't know what I was doing. I was incredibly unhappy. The school was unhappy. I almost got fired. One person who was from TFA told me that I was going to fail and I wasn't going to get a license. That felt really great. I found out later that they wanted to fire me. The school wanted to let me go around Christmas time, which would have been terrifying. And I got to tell you that all the emotions that we described for failure, I felt all of them on a level that I don't really feel emotion very profoundly like some people, but I was like feeling all of them. And people who knew me last year when I got here could tell you how palpable my anger and rage were. It was pretty, like I said, it was unbelievable. It was definitely the darkest time of my life. So my question to you is, where am I registering on the different types of failure? And what type of failure am I experiencing here? Where if you were to look at the spectrum, what kind of failures am I having? What do you guys think? Any questions? Let me know down. What do you think?
Well, I think at certain points you hit all of them, but especially with your son and with the complete lack of support that you got from your job, that was completely catastrophic. You did that within a week. At least I would consider that.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, from your thing like lack of ability, you had no idea what you were teaching, no one gave you any support. The uncertainty after you find out that you might want to let you go, you have no idea what's going to happen.
Yes. All right.
So looking at the levels, I think that probably at different times you were vacillating between large and catastrophic, because something like that would create a paradigm shift. It would affect your future decisions and how you would think about yourself and your life, and whether that's change it for the better or for the worse, it changes it.
Yes.
But it's something that you obviously have come back from.
Right. But I definitely, you can ask Wes, he's my brother-in-law. Am I the same person I was 3 years ago? Yep. So I gotta say that I would agree with the decisions that are catastrophic. I would say that I would definitely put myself in that category. And being afraid, feeling vulnerable, definitely a thing. So what happened to me?
Sorry,
Monique?
Cameron, I was just
Yeah, go
going to
ahead.
say, I don't think this situation that came upon you, it was no failure on your half. You know, these are, you'll talk about it, because we're just talking about failure, and I think you weren't on that failure, you were feeling all those emotions because life was acting on you.
We'll explain, yeah.
I want to go along with that. What does failure mean? I mean, is that a setback? We all have things that happen in our lives. Failure is like comparing ourselves to other people or what the expectation is. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So when I think of failure, I think of, I don't know.
I
It's
think
not
your
just
book
difficult.
definition, right?
the book.
Something that should have happened, but just didn't.
Right.
Was
But according to who, right? Like, who are you basing that on?
Your own
I'm just saying, like,
It could be mine, Teach for
Yeah.
America's, could be the schools, my wife's. The answer is, well, we'll talk about that in a second. I think it'll make a lot more sense here in a minute. So here's something that happened to me. Something you have to do. It must happen if you're gonna get past failure, especially when it's a huge failure. You have to accept the truth. Failing requires nothing. Largely, you don't even notice it half the time. And then when you have to admit it, it really is terrible. It's like, but also not at the same time. It is the first step. It is the hardest. And so my question to you guys is, why do you think people don't like to admit they're failing? Businesses will spend billions of dollars on a failed venture. Donald Trump is a great example. Like he did that in his casinos. He spent billions of dollars on them after he knew that they weren't a viable option anymore. Why don't people like to admit that they failed?
Well, I don't want to answer that question. I wanted to say something else. Do you want to have Laura answer that
Yes, do you
question?
have an answer to the question?
Yeah, well, I have a couple of thoughts about it. I think that because I have a tendency to do this, you feel like it sometimes reflects on you as a person, like it's personal. You know, like if your business fails, you're like, oh, I failed, not my business has failed, the idea has failed, it's I failed. And then there are times where, you know, like you're saying, spending billions of dollars on something that isn't succeeding, like you're still grasping onto those straws, like maybe this could still work, maybe I'll get through it, instead of like reevaluating and trying something different.
I think there's a big difference in the way you think about it between I failed and I am a failure. Because if you start believing that you are a failure yourself because of one thing that you did that failed, that's a totally different mindset than something that I didn't go as I planned.
Yeah.
Kind of what she's saying, kind of, I'm not sure, but like, I think when you admit that you failed, you're kind of having to accept like true reality, and sometimes people like hold on to like if they don't admit that they failed, then they can keep doing what they've been doing, and like, I don't know if that makes sense, but sometimes.
Okay, Danny, then Shayla, then we should move on.
Well, I think kind of with the Donald Trump thing, he has how many people looking at him, and he's a business owner, and if you are in charge of something and it's going downhill, you have everyone else that's looking at you as well.
It's true.
It's not just yourself, you got everyone looking at you.
Very complicated. It's true.
Well, I think like if we base it off of our culture, something that I'm trying to teach the students I work with at Box Elder this year is like Facebook and social media and stuff. You see all these great things that everybody's doing, but like you guys don't see like. So I can tell you guys how like Maslow's Closet, for example. Like I worked on it for a really long time, and I'm really proud of it. But like. You guys don't know how many stores or places I went to that told me like, no. Like I had to keep trying. But all you guys hear from me is like, I finally got this done. So like, it's more like our culture shows on like social media just only like the happy things, but you don't see the failures. It's like, you know, you're going to Disneyland and you only see the pictures from Disneyland, but you don't see like everybody fighting in the car because they're sick of being in the car, or like your brother pulling your hair, like, you know. So I think like our culture has a lot of like, we just want to show success rather than our failures.
I agree. And then Melissa, I didn't mean to forget you, buddy.
No, you're fine. Well, so what I was going to say actually had a lot to do with what Megan said. I did a class in college. It was a communications class, and the professor had to literally write out sentences that were as specific as possible to talk about failure. So instead of saying I failed math, you would say, this fall I failed a math test which led my grade to be an F. Like, and it sounds kind of dumb, but at the same time, like being really specific about it leads to you don't feel like a failure. Like, I don't fail at all math, I just failed at that one math, right? And it kind of changes your perception of, I'm not a failure, there just was a failure here at this one thing.
Yes. And as I put on here, the problems with that, and I think we articulated them to some degree, with not admitting it and not recognizing it and accepting it, is that you're wasting resources. And something that is just not going to happen. Donald Trump had to abandon the casino industry, go back to his realty, and he made more money doing that. You know? And the other thing is you can't grow. When you continue to waste resources in something that isn't working, you cannot grow. Okay. So, we're going to go back to my story here, and I'm going to explain to you at the point where I was at the end of the school year. I was very angry, and I'd complained a little bit, and other teachers understood. I was denied licensure. So I couldn't stay teaching. Well, there was a way I could stay teaching, but it was really, really ridiculous. So I didn't want to do it because I had already spent probably $6,000 between moving and the other agency. I was probably lowballing that number, by the way, when I just said that. I'm not really 100% sure how much I spent. I know that the licensing agency $1,300, and to fail something that you spent basically a college tuition worth on is just, when you have kids and family at home, is just not, I don't know. It made me feel worse, and I felt like an idiot for like failing, because this was the first thing that I like really failed at. Like, I've had lots of small failures before, but this is the first time where I like straight up failed, like hardcore, crashed and burned, and I felt kind of humiliated. I felt like everyone knew about it, which was probably, thinking back on it, was not true. Most people didn't care, but I felt like they did, and that's shame, you know. And at some point, that's why I bolded it, I had to have an honest conversation with myself. I can either stay here where I'm angry after throwing all this money away, where my wife's not happy, in a place where I don't particularly like, away from my family, or I can do something about it. and saying like, and not only am I angry, but I failed. I did not get certified. These kids, they like me now. They did not like me for a long time. I almost got fired. I spent that money on something that some people think was a waste of my time. Yeah, that was a real thing. I really did those things. So I chose to regroup, and so I came home. We picked up my family, told the school who ended up wanting me to stay. I told them no thanks, and I came back. And so I felt like I was running away. But now, being a year plus out, I realized I wasn't really running away. I was trying to, regrouping really is a good definition. I was trying to get to a place where I could refocus my efforts and think about where I was at in my life. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, so the outcomes. Because I accepted it, I went home and faced the death of my son. I was able to look at my experience and determine where I actually failed. If I had stayed there, I would not have been able to. Because I don't think I would have accepted that I had failed if I had stayed. It would be like, no, I didn't really fail. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to be a good teacher, blah, blah. No. I left because I failed. And I was able to find out why. The school was expecting me to spend, 80 hours a week teaching stuff. I did not want to do that. I'm a 50 max guy, 50 hours, that's it, right? Like, except for Vista, I maybe get more of that, but teaching, no way, man. I realized that, it was true. I really didn't have the support I needed to reach those standards. So in the end, I came to realize that I was partially responsible. So was the school. So was Teach for America. So was my situation. And I could really only control myself, right? I can't control Teach for America. I couldn't control the school. And I definitely couldn't control a random thing like my son dying and stuff like that. Those are things I cannot control. And so I was able to get to that point after accepting what had happened, right? And then I found a good job where I like doing it, so I'm still here. And I'm not angry like it was. It is largely left. I wouldn't say it's completely gone. I don't know if it ever will be, but it's the anger I had last year is totally gone. And for the most part, I've been able to recover my self-esteem and self-worth. But I cannot say that the way I think about things and reason through problems is the same, because it's not. It is permanent. This whole experience has a permanent paradigm-shifting effect on me. That's true. And I can tell you straight up, like I said, without accepting that I had failed at that one point at the end of the school year, I don't even know where I'd be right now. In a bayou somewhere, probably, with crocodiles, alligators. Need to move on. So I have come to find that accepting the truth is not necessarily about finding fault or blame. I mean, you're going to find out where the fault was or where the blame was, but it's not really what it's about. Accepting failure is just accepting, as Jacqueline said, the truth or reality. And thinking back on it, it gave me the power to have clarity, and it eventually freed me, and it took a lot of humility, which is not my strong suit, and I can tell you 100% that it is uncomfortable. And that's also, in our culture, why we don't ever talk about all the failures, is because it is uncomfortable. But it has to be done, because it is required to make things change. I'm almost done, guys. We're going to make it. Okay. So in order to reflect and analyze your failure, you have to accept that it took place to begin with. You'll be able to find any processes or behaviors that led to that. It's not really about blame, but you will find fault. And usually it's shared through multiple parties. Maybe you didn't get specific enough directions from your boss, so you just did what you thought was best. And that's why that the thing you wrote was a failure. That's a thing. And it can be uncomfortable. And at that point, you have to admit 100% to yourself, like everything that happened that you did, all of the things that you actually did. And then the best part is that how you feel about that event at this point will change. You're using it as a teaching tool to teach yourself. You're no longer, those negative emotions start to go away. And you can look at it with clarity, peace, and that's really a nice thing. Our bodies are great, right? So, tips for you. This is for you as an individual, right? You got to reframe things. So, does anybody have any idea what the illusion of control is? Any of you Kung Fu Panda watchers? You get a really great explanation. I tried to put it in here, but I was like, I don't got time to watch Kung Fu Panda. But he's got, like, in the first Kung Fu Panda, the turtle guy actually explains it in a very, very good way. Anybody remember what he says? The peach tree. Yes. It's the peach tree. Give her a prize. So basically, he says the illusion of control is that there are things you can control, like you can plant the tree, you can harvest the fruit, but you cannot change what the tree actually is, right? And so that was, in my story, it was accepting the things that I could actually influence versus what I could not, right? And so that is a really great thing to talk to yourself about, like, what can I actually control, which is usually just yourself, just, short trip to myself. But I got to tell you, as a parent, sometimes people want me to control my children. They are people, and I'll do the best I can, but they're still people, right? But that is the one thing, like, just have that conversation with yourself frequently. And it really is, failure is inevitable. A lot of it is how you deal with it, what you do after it happens. Right? And it is like grief. I think it was Karen who said that people are different in how they experience it. And that's true. Did you know, it's useless information that's in my head, that a lot of marriages break up after a huge loss because people can't handle how their significant other grieves? You're not grieving the same way about our son's death. I don't like you anymore. Like, that is weird, but that's how people think. So we have to break that up in our minds and say, no, it's okay. My wife dealt with that whole situation very differently than me. Yes?
So when people are experiencing trauma, they're not logical at all. Like, if you ever picked up a phone and had somebody in an emergency situation, like, they can't say what they're saying. All they know is the thing that they just saw, and they keep repeating it over and over again. And you have to be the one that is sensible and helping those people who are struggling or who think that they are experiencing failure. And if they are, be like, okay, well, if that's what you're experiencing, that's cool. But, well, no, it's not cool. That's, you also,
I can understand.
I'm here to help you. Like, I'm here to help you. And I feel like that's kind of what our, like, little VISTA group is. Like, we're, like, this little group people here, we're a family. And we understand what each of us is going through, and we have that network to strengthen us so that if one of us is going through a hard time, we can help each other.
Yes. Love it. Stamp it. Give them an award. Okay. My last bit of advice for you is to try and recognize it as fast as possible. You don't want to have an accumulation of failures turn into something you can't control. Because having been through that, and I mean, I think a lot of people do have defining moments or big, huge things that happen in their lives. It's unavoidable, it's human experience, but you can minimize some of those by being proactive at identifying failures early. And then the tips for your organization. This one I got from that Harvard Business Review paper, which was really a good short read. If anybody wants to let me know, I'll send you a copy. This is what they recommend. So as someone is putting in a new policy or a new system, like working with volunteers, think about these things. Frame the work accurately, right? So people need to know exactly what they're supposed to do and what it's supposed to look like as accurately as possible. Because if you don't, then you can't get mad at people. Because people are different. They brain work differently. So if you are as clear as possible, that will minimize it. And then embrace messengers. Anybody have any idea what that means? Say that loud, Jaden.
Don't kill the messenger.
So why would that be a thing?
I think they're giving you very valuable information.
Yes. Is that what you're going to say, Jason?
You said, why is that a thing? And I was like, well, because messengers also, like, they carry some negative stuff a lot of times. And you have to figure out how you're going to frame it or how you're going to embrace it.
And
it's hard to hug a cactus. But if that's what they bring in, you got to figure out how to.
Yeah, there we go. Well, I think it comes back to, we were talking over here with addressing conflict and communication. You can't kill the guy who's telling you what you want done. If you're concerned about the growth of your organization or flaws in your organization and what you're doing, especially if it involves human lives, you can't fire the guy who tells you that things aren't working. That sends the wrong message to everyone else. Laura.
I think even if your messenger is bringing something that you don't agree with, it's good to be at that point of humility where you can consider what they said and analyze it and be like, all right, do I agree with this or not? And if you don't, like, that's okay. Like, you don't have to be mad at them about it. And, you know, like, it's up to you to react how you will to the information they're bringing.
Yes. And then acknowledge limits. Talking about limits, talking about like me saying, hey guys, I would really love to tell you all the weird benefits that VISTA has, but I really just don't have the knowledge. That's me acknowledging the limit that I have. Okay? Because if you are someone who likes to pretend you're omniscient about everything that happens, it's just not good. Right? Because then people won't feel like they can give you feedback. They feel like they can't give you any information. And then they'll keep things to themselves and bad things will happen. Yes?
And also acknowledging limits of others, like sometimes like with the failure, like some people might have different failures than you, and acknowledging like when you are coming up with the, I guess, failure of productivity are, yeah, just helping making sure like you're not just thinking of yourself, but thinking outside and thinking of other people's limits, how they view it.
Good stuff. Okay, I got two more things and then this is it. We're done. And by participation, this has a lot to do with the messengers and how you act. Like if you're open to feedback, then more people will give you feedback, and you should solicit the feedback, right? You should invite everyone to have an equal voice in making sure that failures don't happen or are minimized in your organization. And that will only allow you to deal with them in a more productive manner. And the last one is set boundaries and hold people accountable. So in the article, the story they gave was this woman was in a hospital. She came up with these rules from the hospital. And what she'd tell the people, she'd say, look, you're not going to be penalized for telling me about a problem, but you will be penalized if you broke the rules, and that's why the problem happened. And that was that was kind of her thing. Everyone knew that if they violated the rules, that there was going to be an action taken. But they also knew that giving that information was not a punishable offense. So she set that boundary very clearly for them, provided participation, and it helped them improve the services at a hospital. Yes.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I think in our society and culture, we think of failure as being this really bad thing, and we don't want to fail, we don't want failure. But I think we should shift and celebrate failure, because in my opinion, if I'm not failing at something, it's because I'm not trying. I'm doing things I'm comfortable with and I know I'm going to succeed at. Like, I have to risk failure and I have to experience failure, at least on that small to mid-range levels, to know that I'm actually pushing myself, I'm trying, I'm becoming better than I was before. And I think it's the same for organizations. Like, if they have no failures, they're not trying anymore.
I agree.
That's good.
Okay, well, that's all from our presentation. Any quick questions?